Tecmo World Wrestling. It's your call from the opening bell to the final pin. And welcome to Nostalgia, a chronological exploration of every NES game released in North America. I'm Mike.
I'm Sean.
And I'm Joe.
I forget, you guys like wrestling or not?
I like stories about wrestling. I don't like wrestling.
I mean, yeah, not really. When I was a kid, I was a WWF fan back in those days, but that was it.
When did you fall off, Joe? What do you remember? Like, who was the world champion at the time?
I mean, I don't remember really a lot of details. I was very young. My older brother was into it, but like I remember, Stone Cold. I remember Triple H. Undertaker, Kane.
He's the commissioner now, right?
Triple H?
Yeah.
Yeah, he runs things behind the scenes now. He doesn't. I mean, he still makes appearances on the show, but he doesn't wrestle.
No, yeah. I figured that was the case.
Yeah. No, because sometimes they have commissioners, right? That don't have any actual official capacity, but they act like commissioners on the show.
Part of the story. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So he's the Gary Bettman of the WWE.
Yeah, that's happened a few times, and it's like, that guy is not the actual Gary Bettman. They're just the acting Gary Bettman. Anyway, all that to say, it doesn't really matter whether you guys like wrestling or not. I just thought it would be good to remind people, because turns out a lot of people, there's a lot of crossover. A lot of people who like wrestling like this podcast, and so we kind of owe them a good episode here, guys.
Okay.
So the back of the box, it's your call from the opening bell to the final pin. It's your call, a reference to the sort of career mode you have over the wrestler you choose in this game. You are greeted with the 9 wrestlers, and it's not immediately apparent to me, at least, that there were 7 others. I just saw the 2 and thought, like, what? I can only choose between these 2? But there's like a weird system of like pressing start means that you're choosing your character, not A. So that was kind of surprising. But anyway, that's not the point. Once you pick your character, you can even change the name of the wrestler to be your name or a different name or Hulk Hogan, whatever you want. That can be who the wrestler's name is. But would you guys dare to change the name? Like, they're giving you, it's a cool official name. It's not like, hey, this is Rick.
No, there's too much already differentiating these guys and making them their own like character. I mean, it's not that there's a story or anything, but they have enough of a persona that I don't need to customize that unless you're going to give me more to customize.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind the option, just to name your character. But yeah, you're right. They're not like empty slates for you to put your personality on. They clearly have like their own intended characters.
Right. And so, Joe, I agree. It's great to have the option just for shenanigans or whatever. There's the option in every RPG to also change the name of those characters. But don't tell me that you changed Chrono's name to be Joe instead because you were playing.
No, I never do that, but I thought that you did that. Maybe not in Chrono Trigger, but in some early Final Fantasy games. Final Fantasy 2, for example?
I don't remember. No, but I don't remember if Final Fantasy 2 gives you official names. Like, Final Fantasy 1 doesn't give you official names.
You have official names, don't you?
I will say that, I'm guilty of the first time I played Final Fantasy 7, changing Cloud's name to Sean. So you get it. You get me.
That's funny. No, I mean, like, it's fine because, like, I think, Sean, what you were trying to say is, at what age are we talking about doing that?
Kid.
And you were a young kid. Now there are rules. Just like in life, like, you grew up and you found out that you can't change the name of these Final Fantasy characters no matter what they tell you.
Yeah, just like I feel like it speaks to like some underlying problem if you change if you're making is that even an option in the newest Final Fantasy? I don't even think it is.
Joe, you played it.
No, I don't think you can because
I don't probably because there's voice acting, right? Yeah.
Like if you were a 32 to 33-year-old man changing it to Joe, that'd be kind of weird. I kind of judge you.
But like, yeah, I mean, I do it in Pokemon, but again, it's like a blank slate.
No, yeah,
character.
it's supposed to be you.
Or like a game I mean, I haven't ever done it in Final Fantasy VIII, but like if I were playing like with friends for like the millionth time, and I'm just like goofing around and like not having a serious playthrough, I would change the name.
Right, which is great that it's there. I agree. I guess I'm just saying you wouldn't dare actually change these names. And I guarantee you, the three of us in our limited time playing Tecmo World Wrestling, we did not change the names. Is that correct to assume?
That is correct to assume.
It
Okay.
is not correct on my end.
Wow, you made it Joe?
No, I didn't make it Joe, but I played 2-player again, actually before I even played 1-player. So we were just naming we tried every wrestler, and each time we picked one, we would just name it something silly. And then the funny thing is after you're done with that match and you go to pick a new wrestler, the name of the wrestler you already named stays. So like by the end, all 6 or whatever wrestlers all had these goofy, weird names.
I love it.
Okay, I like that. And after you choose or choose not to change the name of the character, you are given the choice of an exercise that you want to do to get stronger. Again, this is for the career mode. And, clearly, whatever workout, just to get it out of the way, the way that the workout works is you choose, like, I'm going to do push-ups. And whether you choose to do push-ups or any of the other things, it's just mash the A button. It doesn't matter what you choose. The end result is just mash the A button as fast as you can to gain, like, 1 point of strength. And clearly, these guys are doing a lot more working out than just the 15 push-ups I do in the game, right? Because maybe Vince McMahon's pushing steroids in this league too, but 15 push-ups is not enough. Like, I thought they were really going to, like, mash the A button and watch these guys Hulk out, but they barely do anything.
It's the equivalent of, like, the panic exercise that I do, and I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have eaten that. Like, this is really bad. Like, and that's what's kind of happening here.
Yeah, I wish, though, that, like, I think it's a cool idea. I just wish that it was more than just increasing your strength. I don't want it to be like, oh no, you have to do 10,000 push-ups to increase, like the amount there is fine. My complaint is that, like, it's just all 3 exercises are the same mini game and they all do the same thing.
Yes, no, I think that I am 100% on the same page as you, that they could have made it so that even if you just choose any of the 3, right, like, so push-ups obviously would increase strength, but don't even change that you mash the A button as, like, the thing you do. It would be ideal if they made, like, one was a timing thing, and you have to make sure you hit A when it crosses this threshold or whatever. But even if it was just mash the A button, it should have had, like, different stats. So there's, like, a trade-off of, like, do I want to do my strength or my grappling or my speed? Like, are those the 3 things I can work on? But instead, it's just, now you're stronger. Of course, this only really matters anyway if you lose matches, because that's the only way you'll see it again. If you win the match, you don't go on to exercise. So that's a pretty neat way to balance for players who are having difficulty with the game, of just like, well, yeah, you didn't win the match, but now you can gain an extra strength point or whatever in our little mini game here.
Right. The reason that I wanted it to be, like, not all just mash the A button is because it's too, I don't know, does it get harder as you're going to higher levels, or is this always the same amount of, like, A presses to get to the next level? Because
it's not even a challenging amount of A buttons, though, right? Like, it's not a challenging amount of presses, and that's what I was saying. I wasn't arguing that the amount of presses you have to do should increase. Like, you should have to do 1,000 push-ups. I'm saying animation-wise, we should see our guy doing crazy feats, not just doing 15 push-ups.
Oh, well, sure. But I just mean that, like, the amount of presses is, I don't think you could be trying to get a level up and fail. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's too easy to do that. Really, if you peel back a coat of paint, like, all you're really doing is selecting the stat you want to increase. Fine, but, like, I don't know. I guess I wanted it to be a little more of a challenge to be, like, to get the next stat. Otherwise, like, just give me a screen where I allocate my point to the stat.
This is also something that you see for like 20 seconds, and then you play the game.
Right. We've talked about it longer than it happens. And again, you don't see it again unless you lose. So, how much does it really matter? It's kind of inconsequential. So as Sean mentioned, once you do all that, then you get into the fighting. So that's obviously why people play this game. They want to wrestle other people. And we've played a few wrestling games before, and they've all had interesting ways to deal with how do you make a wrestling video game where all you have is 4 directions and 2 buttons. And so with this one, what they decide to do is that, like, yeah, you can punch and kick from, if you're at like a distance or whatever, but the real intricacy comes when you grapple your opponent, or I think in the manual they refer to it as clinching.
Yeah, which is, I feel like, more of a boxing thing.
Right. And so maybe it's a weird translation thing or whatever. So I'm going to say grappling. And when you're in the grapple, it's kind of like you and the opponent are both hoping that your input goes through and that you're the one who's lucky enough to perform the move. But inside there, rather than like the odd approaches we've seen of like menuing your choice of like what you're going to do, this one chose the like, series of inputs, and not necessarily like, okay, Street Fighter 2 style, like do a quarter hook on the, counterclockwise and then press the B button. It's not like that. It's just a direction and a button. So theoretically, even if you don't know what you're doing, right? Even if you don't know the exact thing to do a body slam, you might just luck into it, because once you get into the grapple, just hit any direction and either the A or the B button, and something will happen. And maybe it'll happen for you, or maybe it'll happen for the opponent. I couldn't ever quite tell why I was getting my
That's
move
the thing. That's the thing right there. You can button mash all you want, and you'll probably 40 to 50% of the time do something. But there's just not enough feedback here for me to know, like, okay, why did I lose that? Was that because I timed it wrong? Was it because this particular grapple arrangement, like what I did, just won't work? I could definitely have used some like actual feedback aside from just like having it happen to me.
Yeah, I'm glad you guys said that, because first of all, what you're describing is the way that I generally play any fighting or wrestling game. So it took me a while to realize that was happening, because I just thought, like, yeah, I'm just being my normal idiot self when I play this, and just mashing buttons and hoping things happen. And after a while, I was like, okay, I got to really try and like figure out what's doing what, and it didn't really change anything for me. I still felt like I didn't know what was going on, so wasn't sure if it was just me.
And to be fair to the game, there is in the manual a whole bunch of combos and stuff you can do, and even specific to the particular characters. So my question isn't like, how do they communicate pulling off the moves? Like, that's fine, right? Like, if I do the input for body slam, I might pull it off. There's just, as Sean was mentioning, it's not even, it could be a luck thing, or it could be a like, well, if you're the guy who grabs and you put in the input fast enough, then you'll perform the move, or you have a better chance of performing the move. It's not communicated to the player. And so that's what kind of becomes the weird part of the entire wrestling match, because the punching and kicking gets you almost nowhere. Like, you're not going to do a lot of damage. Your opponent's not looking to make this a boxing or kickboxing match, right? They're mostly going to do grapples too. So you're just kind of running into this situation where most of the time you get into these, hugging matches and hope that you're the guy who slams the opponent.
Yeah, because firstly, I think that it definitely takes precedence. Like, if you're trying to strike, you're trying to like throw punches as he's approaching you. Like, yeah, you might hit him once or twice, but his input is going to I forgot the actual word for it. It's going to take like precedence, and he's just going to grapple you as soon as you land that hit. Like, there's no way to defend against one. And I guess like in a wrestling game, like, yeah, you're going to want to grapple regardless, but I think I've even initiated grapples, and it's the same animation, I think, whether you're the one to initiate or not. And then still, like, it's kind of a coin flip whether in the next couple frames you're going to be flipped over his head or vice versa. It's very hard to gauge it. But I'm really just reiterating what we've just been saying.
That's fine. No, I can move on from here, because there's so many possibilities of what can happen in that grapple, right? There's, just to list them off: knee lift, brainbuster, body slam, headlock, backdrop, pile driver, and then there's specific ones for the characters too. So there's so many different inputs that can happen. All that to say that could create a very fresh gameplay experience where, you're not always just doing suplexes nonstop or whatever, and that can get boring. or it could create a very frustrating system for those who, seem to be me and Sean here, can't learn the system and can't figure out why these things are happening. And so if we feel kind of powerless over the many choices we have, like, I don't know, is the body slam stronger than the backdrop, or am I just doing this all for flair?
Yeah, I feel like it's a game that like you'd have to spend a lot more time with to really familiarize yourself with that stuff. Like it just in this past week as I've been playing around with it, I just don't think I had enough time to like figure out what works best. I mean, I figured out some things and how to do certain things, and other times they don't always work, but I just never know like what's my best move, what's the best way to play this. And I guess the question then becomes like, is this a game that is worth giving that amount of time? So like that's it turns into that.
I did appreciate, like, obviously the moment to moment like input and feedback situation is a problem, but taking a step back and more like the holistic view of the game and like how those inputs correlate to your winning or losing a match. I did appreciate that in you giving or receiving punishment, the two life bars that you see, I guess, I don't know if they're life bars or energy bars or momentum, or it kind of acts as a proxy for momentum, because as you're taking damage, their little energy is going up too. So like it gives it that kind of it gives it the flexibility to make it sort of a back and forth match. It's just you need to know how to do those things in order to take advantage of that gameplay element.
But Sean, that's a great point about the way that the we'll call them energy systems work, because they do refuel and come down, and they basically are dependent on how the match is going, and so it does create a bit more of a wrestling story. I'm not trying to get poetic here with it, but like it does create a little more story than just a flat HP meter where like, okay, just first one to get down to 0, because that's not how things work. There aren't really knockouts in the WWE or, back then in the WCW, WWF. There, that's not a common thing to happen. You don't usually just beat the guy until he can't breathe. Usually, it's like you kind of like are down for a little bit, then you come back up, and then usually there's like a moment where the tides turn, and then you pull off the finisher, and the crowd gets all amped, and you do the pinfall, right? It's like there needs to be a little bit of that here to communicate that. And so all that to say, everything that we've been talking about with the grappling system and just the confusing controls, the game actually, as a wrestling game, I think presentationally and control-wise, feels like a wrestling game. It kind of feels similar, even though I don't feel like I know what I'm doing. It feels similar to those THQ wrestling games from the mid-90s, early 2000s that everybody seems to love so much. It kind of has the early DNA of that stuff.
I think you're right, and I was probably just as bad at those as I am here. I'm a little bit better now. But what I really liked presentationally is like that you've even got the announcer at the bottom there. Like it's moving way too fast to be able to read anything unless you're watching somebody play this game. But it's got everything you'd think of like an announcer would say, like or be. It's kind of like a 70-year-old grandma with a blue blouse and a white collar. She's got like that very faded blonde hair that's a little too thin, but you know that she was very attractive maybe 40, 50 years ago. And
you got a lot more internal lore for this announcer than I did.
What do you mean?
I just mean that I just can't believe I've been so blind until you described it.
In-game commentary provided by Tom Talker. That was the best name.
Oh, that's Tom Talker.
Yeah, it's the best name they could come up with.
Not Phyllis.
On the spot. And Sean, you're right. I had in my notes here a bit fast, but really I mean very fast, because as somebody who was trying to just keep an eye on my opponent, I don't think I heard anything this guy said. Like, and obviously he's not talking with voice, so it's not heard. I don't think I read, which is even worse, right? If he was talking, if it was audio, you'd hear it and be like, oh, maybe he's giving me like a tip on like what would be the next best move. Like, oh, don't let him get you in a headlock. And it's like, cool, I'm going to put him in a headlock, right? But that's not even what's happening. Instead, it's just an amazing, display of presentation, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of lines written for this.
A lot of lines, but it's almost like if we played a baseball game, right, where there was commentary the whole time, you'd be focusing on your pitching and fielding, not on the commentary.
Yeah.
Right. And it's funny because in baseball, it seems a little more possible that you could read because, like, maybe they'd be saying something, in between pitches or something. But, like, in this game, like, there's really not a moment where you can look away. so it's even harder. And I decided that, like, the best way to incorporate that is if you're playing 2-player, you need to have a third person to read the commentary in their commentator voice, and they can read it to you. But like, there's no world in which I'm like, I'm going to try and read these fast moving comments about what I'm doing, rather than look at what I'm doing.
This game would have been a perfect candidate for the Intellivision's IntelliVoice, if only the NES had something similar. The IntelliVoice was a peripheral that you actually plugged into your Intellivision and then plugged the cartridge into that, and it would create like a voice synthesizer for the game, so that games, even that came out beforehand, they didn't require the IntelliVoice. They could add voice to those games. And so that would be pretty cool if there was like, it could add, via this peripheral, the voice for the commentator so that I could actually hear what he's trying to tell me. But he's not trying to tell you anything cool. He's not trying to give you tips. He's not your manager, right? He's not in your corner. I feel like we need a little bit maybe of that too.
Yeah, I mean, when I think about a career mode in a wrestling game, I'm thinking of like the ridiculous storylines that you'd see in regular wrestling, where like over the course of several matches, like you've got rivalries and stuff, and that's not really something that I think the NES can even do. So that's why I wouldn't have really called this a career mode. It would be more of like just a campaign. I don't know.
The NES can totally do sports dramatic commentary on games, because we played for Nostalgia Bites Captain Tsubasa 2, and that was like
That's true.
Soccer to the extreme. Yeah. But Sean, I wanted to say that, there is a little bit, not necessarily of a career mode or even like anything too big, but there is a rivalry between all the wrestlers and the secret wrestler, the Blue King, the Manic Warrior.
Yes, I did see this in the manual.
He's teased at the end of the manual as an epilogue. It's like here's how you play the game, here's how you operate your wrestler, here's some bios on all the wrestlers, and then it says epilogue. His name is Blue King, the Manic Warrior. Rumor has it that he came in 11th place and was disqualified from the preliminary matches. Yet there is something mysterious about him. Well, if he came in 11th place, he can't be that good, right? But anyway, the Blue King is an unplayable character that you will fight at the end of the game after you win the world title. And so there's a little bit of story there, but more like story between the manual and the game, like not story that was ever implied inside the game. So it's kind of like, I think it's just cool on its own, right? Like, you don't need that tease in the manual. Just have him show up at the end of the game and be like, "Whoa, wasn't expecting that."
That's true. I think that would add to that's the storyline there. You're ruining it by telling us about it in the manual.
Yeah, I think in the manual you need to have like the hint to it, like in your story of this wrestling league. Just mention somehow, like, only 10 people qualified, not like that guy who couldn't hack it, the Blue King, or something like that. And you're like, oh my God, it's the Blue King. It's the guy who couldn't hack it.
You sound like a guy who wrote manuals before. Joe, this character is also reminiscent of the final boss of Pro Wrestling, Great Puma, who was also an unplayable character that you don't get to play as afterwards, and he's the final boss of that game. So is Tecmo Wrestling just stealing from Pro Wrestling? Pro Wrestling seems to be the higher regarded game in the NES wrestling game pantheon. But to get back to just the Blue King and the mystery of it all and everything, it reminded me a little bit of the Super Smash Brothers, like when you unlock a new character and it just shows their silhouette and everything. it's kind of cool. Like, you're like, oh, this person's in the game. Like, you just didn't know back then. Like, but Blue King is a nobody. Like, they should have just licensed someone's likeliness.
Like Mario or something.
Right. Or a real wrestler, just like a real wrestler shows up at the end. I think about, sorry if this is a spoiler for people, but the Punch-Out game that came out on the Wii had Donkey Kong as the final boss, like the final boss, instead of Mike Tyson, right? And that's kind of cool because you might be thinking, like, who's it going to be, right? Like, it's not Mike Tyson anymore, so who could it possibly be? And then you're shocked to find out it's Donkey Kong, right? Like, that's insane. But Blue King is like, who? From what franchise? I never heard of this guy. And then why can't I play as him after I beat him? Like, I can't unlock him? That's not cool.
That's the real question there, yeah.
So, who is the coolest wrestler in the game now that it's not Blue King?
Kind of like the British guy. He's got a cool vibe to him. And that was the only other guy I wrestled as aside from the American Dr. Gildo that I just kept saying in my head, Dr. Guido. But
Dr. Gildo looks nothing like an American though either, right? Like what he's wearing like a leopard mask and everything. I don't identify that as an American.
So you're saying anyone that wears leopard masks can't be American? I'm
just saying a lot of these other ones are a little more like tapped into their region.
Stereotypical.
Right. and meanwhile the American guy like isn't just like, where's the Hulk Hogan, real American of this game? I know I'm saying Hulk Hogan a lot, but it is like 1990s. Still,
where's the Ultimate Warrior?
Huge. Yeah, exactly. Where's the Ultimate Warrior of this game? Who's the closest that we get to the Ultimate Warrior in this game? Barely anybody. Why are like 3 of these guys just people? Right? Akira Dragon, Jackie Lee, and Pat Gordon literally just look like regular people.
Aren't most wrestlers just people, though?
Yeah, but I'm saying, okay, point taken. You are correct. But where's the personality in that?
No, you're right.
But no, you're right, actually, Sean. Don't tell me I'm right.
No, you're right.
No, you're right, and here's why. I'm looking at this as like, with the hindsight of 30, 40 years of wrestling. But at the time, yeah, it was more like wrestlers were like Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, and they just looked normal, right? Like they didn't.
Dragon Steamboat. That you had to have
normal
made that
people
up.
like Ricky the Dragon Steamboat.
Oh my god, you guys don't know Ricky the Dragon Steamboat? That's crazy.
No idea.
He had the best match of all time at WrestleMania 3 against Macho Man.
Oh well, Macho Man.
Macho Man. Actually, you're saying that's less crazy of a nickname for a wrestler.
No. I
Ricky the
really
Dragon.
He's probably the.
I say it is less crazy actually because Macho Man. It's like, okay, I'm a wrestler. I'll be macho and I'm a man. So like that's my nickname. Well, I have no idea where. I mean, the dragon. I guess intimidating
He's
Steamboat.
A steamboat dragon.
Is his last name Steamboat? I mean,
he hits like a steamboat.
the common saying.
Yeah. Sorry, I feel like I'm being way too unknowledgeable for the people listening. I'm gonna stop talking.
It's funny though, Joe. I never thought about that, but Joe, I never thought that Steamboat was his last name. Like I just thought that was just another cool word to be thrown into.
I mean,
the mix.
I'm assuming it's not. I was just kidding. I'm assuming it's part of his nickname, right, or his stage name.
Well, his real name is like Richard Henry Blood Sr. So,
Blood is his real name.
Just stuck with that. Richard Blood.
Richard Blood. Yeah, apparently that's his real name, but that's like cheating. You can't go on Wikipedia and look up these people's real names.
That's against K-Fob,
right? Isn't Hulk Hogan's real name isn't Hulk Hogan?
Is it like Bob Hogan?
It's like Terry Bollea or something like that.
Terry
Bollea?
Bradshaw.
No. But Terry, right? Like, come on, that's no Hulk. That's a little
Scary
different, right?
Terry.
When you think of Terry, right, you're thinking of a woman.
No. Terry McLaurin, Scary Terry.
All right. That's 2.
That's one person, sorry.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
Did either of you guys try the multiplayer at all? Because it's a little different, oddly.
What changed?
So when you're playing multiplayer, it works mostly the same as normal. I mean, you just start a match. You each pick a character. It's not a campaign mode or anything. You just face 1-on-1. But there's a bar in the middle that isn't there in the regular game. That the left side has a pink bar and the right side has a blue bar, and it is constantly, very quickly, going back and forth. Or the blue bar fills up all the way, then the pink bar pushes it all the way back, and then back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I mean, like, the animation cycle's got to be like 1 second, maybe 2 seconds at most. So it's happening really quickly. And apparently, if you are doing attacks when your bar is full, you will have the advantage over your opponent, and vice versa. Also, your defense will be higher. But it's happening so fast that, like, you can try, but it's like you have to, first of all, time your button press to that and also be in the position to do the move, or to, be in a grapple and time your button press. It's hard to do. But I just thought it was interesting because it's not necessarily something that needs to be in 2-player or can't be in single-player.
No,
So
that's
it's
what I would be thinking.
Weird
Like,
that there's 2 versions of it.
they're giving you more information for 2-player when otherwise you'd be on even ground not knowing where this meter is.
Yeah.
And I feel like that for single-player, that would help. I mean, even if it was like too fast to time perfectly, I think that at least having that as an indicator of like, oh, you did that wrong, and you could probably do that a bit better. I think that would make me less frustrated with this game.
Yeah, I mean, it does make... I hadn't even thought about the fact that that is probably running in the background invisibly in the regular game. I'm sure they didn't change the mechanics of the game. So, like, yeah, why not just give you that information?
And with that, we'll move on to the essential games list.
Oh, come on.
What a segue.
I couldn't think of anything.
And the way you said it was so businessy.
Right. That's why I did that, because I was like, I have no flair. Before I vote for Tecmo World Wrestling here, I just wanted to say one other thing that I was going to say when we kept talking about the grappling for 15 minutes, but then Sean politely moved us in a good direction, is that the manual for the combos of how to pull off these moves, whether you're in the grapple or who you are playing as, the manual has this weird thing where it shows you the D-pad and it shows you the the direction you're supposed to put it in, and then it has the plus sign. So I get it. I'm supposed to hit the direction plus the A button. Okay, that all makes sense and everything. Then for some of them, there's like a triangle next to the A button.
Oh, yeah.
And it never says what the triangle is. And I kept scanning the manual over and over again. What's the triangle mean? What does it mean? What does it mean? And then I found at the bottom of the moves list, it says that the triangle techniques may change to upside down triangle techniques depending on the physical strength at the time. What the heck
I don't know
does
what that
that
means.
mean? Right, that still doesn't
answer.
explain what it... Operating the controller is what it says. It says do up on the D-pad plus a triangle. Like, no. There's no triangle button. I'm not sure what they were saying there. I'm not happy about this. And for that reason, no, I'm joking. Another thing, though, they keep referring in the manual, they keep referring to it as the control cross, not the directional pad.
Yeah.
That
I did notice
bothers me
that too.
The control cross. Okay. Anyway, on to the voting time. Tecmo World Wrestling is presentationally pretty great by NES wrestling games. Probably on par with the best we've seen so far. And control-wise, we have some issues with the grappling and stuff, but, like, you can wrestle in this game and feel like you're wrestling. So it's not like it's so hard, right? It's not like it's not Street Fighter level combos and stuff. So you're doing okay from a gameplay standpoint, but I feel like it's still running through the same issue that a lot of fighting games or even just like games that have the same level over and over again run into, is that once you've done a match, you've kind of had your fill if you're not looking for this. And I wasn't necessarily looking for an NES wrestling game in 2023. And so I think even after my first match, it wasn't like I experienced everything, far from it, but I experienced enough to kind of say, like, Now I can say I've played this game for the podcast. And obviously I did play more than one match, but that's not a good comment. That's definitely not an Essential Games List comment to say after one bout, which by the way, these matches can go pretty long by what I guess I would think of for NES standards. They give you a 7-minute time limit. Most of them you're probably going to use that time, but you also, it's like, even if you don't use all that time, it's going to be at least 4 minutes. And is that a problem? Well, no, not for that first match. Maybe not even for that second match, but it will get at you eventually. The idea of like, do I really want to do another match where I'm mostly just hitting buttons with zero feedback and it's going to take me like 5 minutes just to pin this guy? The answer's probably going to be no, just throwing it out there. And that's also why it's going to be no for the Essential Games List for me. Sean?
Yeah, I agree that this is probably the best looking wrestling game that we've had here, and it's got all of the sort of tertiary things that I would want in an NES wrestling game. The ridiculous announcer is like so good, but is really only good if you're like playing for somebody to watch. And even though these characters aren't the most unique or the most characterized, but at least like it's more than just like, oh, here's blue pants guy and red pants guy. It's just the wrestling itself just doesn't make any sense to me. Like again, some of the other stuff in the wrestling itself kind of does, like the whole jumping off the ropes. To jump off the ropes, it's pretty easy to get onto the to get onto the pylon to do like a cool like elbow drop or whatever, but the bread and butter actually trying to wrestle is really not working for me. So yeah, not essential.
Joe?
Yeah, a lot of similar thoughts here. I think this is one of the better, if not one of the best wrestling games we've played on the NES, which I think if nothing else just kind of speaks to the kind of sorry state of most wrestling games we've played so far, because this was pretty lackluster to me. I do think it was like fun for a minute, but I agree with both of you. Like I think that at first, like after that first match, you're kind of like, okay, I get it, I've played it. Do I want it? Do I really want to keep going? And I need more feedback, So I won't drag this on. Obviously, I'm not voting it essential, but better than other wrestling games, some others.
For the record, and we've played a few now, I would say that the best wrestling game was the pro wrestling game that I mentioned earlier with Great Puma. That was just I think that was a Nintendo one too, so it kind of makes sense that they gave it some extra love since they were handling it for their console. But that's not to say that wrestling games can't be on the Essential Games List, because next week we have another wrestling game.
Oh,
we're going to be playing
no.
WCW Wrestling, and we're going to be talking about it again. And that one we're going to actually have to mention people by name, and you guys are going to have to know these people because they're real wrestlers.
Oh, okay. That sounds fun.
The good news is that at least it's not another WWF wrestling game.
Is
it's
Sting in
WCW,
it?
so new wrestlers. I don't know if Sting was there at that time. Let's see,
I like
1990?
Sting.
It's a good question. They were requiring a lot of people, so I think Sting would have been in there by now.
Hell yeah.
I bet you know who else is in there, though.
Rowdy Roddy Piper?
I was going to say Ricky the Dragon Steamboat.
Mm.
And then, just in case you're still interested in other episodes of Nostalgia, they're all free. You can go back and listen to them all. But if you wanted to get the true wrestling experience and have a pay-per-view, well, we have a subscription service for that. It's called patreon.com/nostalgia. And for just $5 a month, every month we release one pay-per-view. And this month is Parodius. Parodius, get a load of this. Not even a Famicom game. Not even an NES game.
We don't even have rules for this anymore.
Right. Why are we playing this game? You'll just have to tune in to find out.
Did you see the special bonus offer in the manual of this game?
Oh, the you send a sticker in.
Yeah. Well, it says collect the Tecmo Game Pack ID badges for Tecmo World Wrestling. Save them. When you've collected 5 total, you can stick them in, the seal, whatever, mail them, and you will receive a special bonus offer. It will be a gift you can share with your family and friends.
Yeah, I did read that. I was wondering if maybe it was like food, like they'd send you like some candy with Tecmo like on it.
I don't know. It's just so vague, and I don't know if there's. I wonder if it's Googleable at this point.
Yeah, I don't know, man. We might have to. Anyone that has sent in these little cutout like box top things, let us know what you got from Tecmo.
And share it. We
Share
know
it with
it's a
us.
gift you can share.